This is a talk I was supposed to give last year at Talking Quality. I was so excited to give it. I ended up in the hospital the night before I was supposed to give it and wasn't able to show up. So Tina asked me to give it here. This is really sort of weird for me because I've never been sort of in a lecture hall like this. I was normally in that seat right up there sleeping. So we'll see how this goes. Thanks for having me, definitely. So every time I give one of these, I kind of do a bunch of Googles on how you give presentations, and everybody says have an agenda slide, so let's have an agenda slide. So what are we going to do? I'll introduce myself. We'll go through a problem statement. We'll go through some solution and ideas. And at any time, if you want to ask questions, either just raise your hand or shout it out. I'm a pretty informal person. And I will warn you right now, I'm really trying hard to cut down on my swearing, but I'm going to guarantee there'll probably be swear words in this at some point. So Kyle introduced me. I'm the VP of Engineering and Customer Experience, which is a really unique role. I head up both our engineering team, which is about a 32-person team, and our CS team. And I do have a leash here, so if I trip on it, try not to laugh too much. And our Customer Experience team, which is our customer success managers and our support specialists. What that allows us to do is have a very keen sense of customer empathy throughout our entire engineering group. We've seen a lot of companies, I've worked at some of them, where engineering and support start to do this. You end up with an engineering force that really doesn't even understand the customer anymore, and that's not what we're all about. I've been in the business for a long time. I won't tell you how long, because I don't look as old as I am. At least that's what my kids tell me. Roadmonk, I've been there 16 months. What is Roadmonk? Roadmonk is a company that is the world leader in road mapping solutions. Every company out there has something they're trying to deliver, and that something has a series of actions, items, activities with a timing, a communication stream that spans. This is really going to bug me. I'm sure it's going to bug you as well. We'll see what we can do about that. We are a 5-year-old scale-up. I refuse to call us a startup anymore. A startup is when I'm fearing paying my employees, and we don't fear that at all. We have 3,000 paying customers, and that's growing every single day. I've also done stints at D2L, 3 years leading up there. It was called the In-Market Excellence Team, which was our live main product. I may have to just hit the mirror button. I did work at EA for a spell, leading an amazing mobile development game, and the game was Scrabble, which is about as exciting as it sounds. So my mom loved me. My kids thought I was the most boring person in the world, but they got almost every EA video game for $10 or less. So I redeemed myself there. And before that, I spent 15 years in medical-based hardware and software, image-guided surgery in particular, brain surgeries, knee replacements, hip replacements, cancer removal, things like that. So I've learned a whole lot from jumping different industries. And doesn't want this presentation to be given, obviously. So, all right, so I took you through the background. I took you through what our company is. The goal of this talk is really, we think Roadmonk's doing some pretty cool things, and we just basically want to share them. And all of those cool things are really centered around one single concept, and it's how do we put the customer at everything, the middle of everything we do, including quality. So the disclaimers, these are our systems. This may not work for you. It's not what I'm up here doing. I'm not trying to sell you product. I'm not trying to sell you ideas. If you don't like them, that's cool. At Roadmonk, we expect that all of our developers also test. I know that's not a concept at every company, but it's definitely a concept at ours. Quality is the responsibility of our entire organization. I don't have a QA team sitting off in the corner. They're not the end of the waterfall stream. Quality is everybody's responsibility at Roadmonk. We love hearing what other companies are doing. Again, we're about 3.5 years into our actual selling of software. The company's a little bit older than that. You got to build something before you can sell it. We don't know everything. We never will. So we love hearing your feedback as well. And yes, we are constantly evolving our approach. So what you hear today, I might be able to come back a year from now, hopefully with better technology, and give a talk on sort of what we've learned. There's a gentleman, Peter Drucker. He stated, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. It's a pretty simple statement. It's one of those ones you read and go, yeah, that totally makes sense. When you apply it to quality, what do you actually measure? I've been around, and what I will give the disclaimer of is managers, one of which I am, are usually idiots. Honestly, how many managers are in the room just before I start bad talking you all? You ask for things that you don't actually understand what you're getting. And the whole premise of this talk came from, and I won't give you the company name, I won't give you the manager, some of you will know because some of you work with me in many other places. But I'll give you the story of why the clickbait type title was formed of take your defect, escape defect count and stuff it. Because what do you measure in quality? I don't know. So I'm going to go through a few that I've seen companies use. I've even used them myself, why they're good, why they're not good, and then I'll actually get to how we measure quality. So first, the good measurements, and I use air quotes because not totally sure if they're good or not. So escape defects and the story. I worked at a company. I think every company in the world now has something called OKRs. If you don't, it's probably your company goals or you have some other fancy term for it, but objectives and key results. And we had a key result, or we had objectives, sorry, to make quality a priority. Awesome, right? You're all either learning about testing, your testers, your developers wanting to hone your testing skills. This sounds really awesome. We're gonna make quality a priority. And our key result was, we will keep escape defects to less than X. Okay. How is X determined? So we looked at the previous year, and that was our escape defect trend for the year. Doesn't matter what the numbers are on the left-hand side. If you're shipping software, I guarantee your escape defect count is climbing. And how we determined X, we'll just say there, because that's better than last year. So let's not exceed that number. And how do you think that worked out? You all chuckle, but honestly, I don't think you would expect any different. Because we didn't really change anything to keep that number down. And we also didn't take into consideration things like, are we shipping more? Are we shipping more features? Do we have more customers? Because all of those things will affect you. Where are the defects? Are they in new code, existing code? What do I actually change to shut things down? What's the severity of the defects? Because if all of those are priority 1 and your customer is on fire, it's a whole lot different looking graph than if they're all just subtle little, yeah, we can move that button a little bit, a couple pixels. And do your customers even care if that's a problem? And you're going to hear this term on almost every single section of this. Do your customers care? Because it's a super valuable point, and I'll get to that a bit later. And does it even matter? So your products don't have to be perfect to be loved. They really don't. And any company that tries to get their defect count to 0, I guarantee is going to fail. And not all defects are created equal. So just setting a single number on escape defects, not a great way of driving quality. And I can actually guarantee, you have 0 escape defects if you don't ship software. And so setting a goal of minimizing your escape defects can actually have an adverse effect on your velocity and your customer's impact, because the easiest way to stop escape defects is stop escaping code. So boldly put, quality is not directly equal to defects. But, because I'm a manager, I do monitor these things. Escape defects do help us do a couple things. It does help your development teams understand your gaps. I'm never honestly embarrassed of releasing a defect. I'm not. I'm embarrassed of releasing the same defect twice. That's sort of where my tipping point is. So when you have an escape defect, it shows you a bunch of things. It shows you what your customers are actually doing. It shows you where your gaps in your test and your development phases were. It actually shows you that you have customers that are positively and actively engaged in your software. And it shows and helps your development and design teams and testing teams really understand what they have to change in their overall processes. So it's not that it's a bad statistic, it's not the only way that I measure quality. It's actually not even a way I measure quality. Number 2, code coverage. How many of you know the code coverage numbers of your software product? 3, 4? Are they good? Perfect answer. Define good. So I've seen a lot of companies that have gone, we're going to fight quality and measure our quality by getting to 100% code coverage, or some arbitrary number that's super high. If you ask me what our coverage at RoadMonk is, I don't even know, because I don't measure it right now, because I actually don't want to drive the behaviors that I'm going to talk about. So you've already answered this. What's better, 20% code coverage, 60, 90, 100? There's honestly no way to know. Because code coverage as an individual unit of measure really has almost zero effect on your ability to deliver software. So what it doesn't show, are the tests even valid? And I worked at a company, everybody's gonna think it's the last one I worked at, it's not D2L, it's way back in my young days. Yes, I was young at one point in my life. We had a team that was spitting out 100% code coverage, and they boasted it, and it was up on every TV screen. They also had the highest escape defect rate of any team in our company, which tells me their tests weren't overly effective. And I can give any developer the challenge to get to 100% code coverage, and you can do it pretty damn easy, but those tests don't mean anything. Are you testing your code the way your customers are actually using it? And are you using things like good versus bad data? And again, does it matter? Your products don't have to be perfect to be loved, and I'll continue to recite this. Great is the enemy of good. I know there's a totally different way of saying that. Perfection stops progress. My goal with my teams is never to get to 100% perfection. Perfection's impossible. Perfection's expensive. And the people that actually suffer are your customers, because you're holding back really good value to try to tweak out that last little bit of quality. And again, I can actually get to 100% coverage and have absolute crap software. So not a measure of quality. But code coverage does help you refactor faster. If you have valid tests and they're actually aligned with the requirements of the feature, I can absolutely refactor code in the future way faster because I have this test bed. They do help validate if your team standards are being upheld. So if your development teams are sort of tasked with actually defining what their test quality strategy is and implementing that, and you're getting 0 unit tests out and 0 automated tests out, is your team really living up to their standards? And truthfully, it does when done right. Tests, to me, are the best documentation of code possible. A good working test that actually tests for your requirements is the best tool to give to a new dev to understand how code works. Those little English lines you put in there of this is how it works, it makes sense to you when you write them. Come back 2 years later. How many of you are developers? 1, okay. 2. And how many times have you gone back 2 years later to code that you commented and you kind of go, I don't know what this is, but the tests never lie if they're written correctly. Number 3, test quality. And I think every company has a term called flaky tests. Put your hand up if you've heard of flaky tests. So here's an actual conversation I've had. I do a lot of conversations with sort of startups in the area that want to pick my brain. And here's an actual conversation I had. James, we've got great automated tests. Awesome, tell me more. How do you know? There's no flakiness, our tests never fail. then how do you know they're working? So this is the hardest one that I actually had sort of trouble writing up, because I don't know how you measure test quality. And I know it's not by having tests that never fail. And I also know it's not by trying to drive your flaky test down to 0. Because truthfully, RoadMonk's had it, D2L's had it, NDI had it, EGFA had it, EA even had it. We would have tests that we thought were flaky, so we would ignore the results out of them. And it always turns out your tests are actually working quite well. It's your code that's flaky. It's your code that's shit, right? So how do you actually measure test quality? And I've seen it sort of all by the number of defects caught by our tests. Okay, maybe. By the coverage, we kind of talked about that. By the number of flaky tests, how do you define flaky? And another sort of theme I've seen at every company I've worked with and for, flaky tests are normally because you've written them that they assume 3 things have happened before they actually get run, instead of a single focused test. And the test that's flaky is not actually flaky, it's because you made a really dumbass decision to base it on 3 tests before, and somebody's changed one of those 3 tests, and now your test fails, and everybody goes, it's flaky. Let's mark it as flaky, let's not include it in the build. This is a terminology that is like every company I talk to, and so if you're out there going, yeah, we do that, don't do that. Figure out, does your test actually test for something valid? And if it does, then your code is shit. By how fast they run, yay, my tests all run in a second. All right, I can have tests that take 0 seconds to run, I just don't write them. Like, how fast they run doesn't make much sense. And by their match the actual requirements. And to me, that last question is the only one that matters. Your tests are only quality if they actually test the way the software is meant to be tested. They test the way that your user uses the software. That's the only measure I really care about. And the truth is, test quality is a combination of all of these things. And does it matter? This is the worst manager answer ever. It depends. It really does on what you're actually doing and what you're trying to deliver. Number 4, this one drives me absolutely nuts, and I've seen lots of companies use it. Our measure of quality is our find versus fix rates. So how quickly do we fix defects? It's a weird way of measuring quality. It really is. So the thinking around this, as long as we're keeping up to the number of defects found, our quality is awesome. Quality is us getting to 0 open defects. And these aren't quotes I just came up with. These are quotes that I've actually had conversations with managers about. In order to have a quality product, we must have more people fixing bugs. And 20 new bugs and only 5 fixed, the product's actually getting worse. So what this doesn't show, and if your goal is to get to 0 defects, well, it was nice having you in the region trying to develop software, because I'm almost guessing and guaranteeing in 2 or 3 years you won't be around. Are you fixing the right things? Are the things that are actually being reported actually defects? Should they just be closed because you don't actually care about them, you'll never fix them? Are they actual feature requests, etc.? Do your customers actually care? I have an iPhone. How many people have iPhones in here? Okay. And Android is probably the other 80%. It's like the way the world works. I guarantee your device is not defect-free. I guarantee you iPhone, Android phones, Android OS has thousands of open defects. I can guarantee it. But are you pissed off at your phone? No, because you can make calls, you can text, you can do what the kids call IGene, Instagram. I don't know, I have 2 daughters, they're all into that stuff. So do your customers actually care that you have some open defects? And what is your rate of release versus the actual rate of find and close? So if I'm delivering a whole bunch of features, like RoadMonk will do this year, I actually expect my release defects and my open defects to climb, and that's okay. And does it matter? I will always stand by the fact that impact of defects far outweigh the number of defects. One defect that prevents your user from logging in is worth way more to you to fix than 100 defects of I used the wrong font on that screen. Not all software paths are created equal. Again, I'll get to that point in a second. And the level investment in defect fixes is actually a business decision. So right now at Roadmonk, I've slowed down our defect fixing to increase our feature release rate. Why? Because those new features are far more valuable to my current and new customers than our open defect count. So this is a business decision, not a quality decision. And again, for the managers in the room, burn down rates do help you have the business decisions and business discussions. They help you trend and analyze the impact of your releases. Obviously, if I'm sending out a small patch release and all of a sudden I opened up 25 or 30 defects, not great. But if I'm sending out the biggest feature ever and I'm only getting 30 defects reported, I'm pretty stoked. It helps us plan, it helps us hire, it helps us staff, it helps us prioritize, and it absolutely helps us understand the areas of our product that need love. So none of these things directly measure quality. And I told you I would tell you how we measure quality, and it's none of those. So then what do we actually measure? So at Roadmonk, quality is simply stated, are our customers effectively getting to wow? So if you sell software, you sell it for a reason. People buy it for a reason. You solve a problem worth solving. That phone call, that text message, that picture on my phone, those are all my wow moments. Are users effectively getting to wow? Wow is what people pay money for. Right, your admin panel, your settings page on your phone, I don't pay money to be able to turn my Bluetooth on and off. Yeah, I expect it to work, but I pay money to be able to talk to my kids, to be able to take pictures, to be able to interact socially. So at Roadmonk, quality is simply stated, are your customers effectively getting to wow? And remember, I promised to share some stuff of how Roadmonk's trying to put the customer at the center of everything we do. So quality is a happy customer? Yeah, it is. Your product has a value path. And it's the steps a user gets or uses to get to that value. It's the problem your software solves. It's the why of their purchase. I don't give away free software. I have a 14-day free trial, but I expect if you love it, you pay for it at the end of that 14-day free trial. And you're not going to pay for it if I don't actually solve your problem in the first 14 days. And you're not going to pay for it if I don't solve your problem effectively in the first 14 days. You're going to go on to something else. And if the user is happy with that value path, you have a quality product. This is what sort of drives me. And again, I'm the VP of our customer experience team, so maybe I benefit from this. Your customers equate quality to experience. So why does every company try to equate quality to defects? It is why I don't really care about my escape defects if my customers are happy. And so how do you measure that? And I said in my little write-up, I'd show you the two ways we measure that. The first is path navigation, and the second is customer feedback. I'll go more into the first than the second. The second is almost self-sufficient or self-explanatory. Are users getting to the wow? And are users getting to the wow the way they expected to? Speed, clicks, frequency. Customer feedback is things like Net Promoter Score. Are your customers willing to recommend your software to other people? Do they renew? Do they continue to pay you money? So I will focus on the first one, the path navigation. There may be some of you out here working for startups and you're going, I don't have customers. Thanks, James. This is a waste of my time because you're telling me the quality is customers and are they happy, and I don't have customers yet. But every company that ever was formed had a theory. You have a theory on the wow. every product has a theory on the wow. So how do you automate your testing for that? How do you define it, communicate it, live it? And how do you find that potential customer feedback before you've even shipped product? So ask potential customers about it, show them mock-ups, all of that stuff. And when you can't test or do it all, because we can't test or do it all, I'm a 32-person engineering team inside an 84-person company. Our roadmap is enough to keep my 32-person engineering team busy for at least the next 6 months, but honestly, for the next 6 years. I can't do it all. So when I'm given as a manager those prioritization questions of, do we test A or B, my fallback is always, is it on the value path? And if I have to make the hard decision, because time to market is your best variable to actually putting money in your pocket and being able to pay your employees, I always default to the value path. So automate your value path. Have telemetry, logging, statistics on your value path. Have the performance metrics on that value path. Because the customer doesn't equate a performance slowdown to a defect, they equate it to, I'm pissed off and I'm leaving. Your ability to ask your customers for feedback and the metrics and processes talked about already all focus on the value path. And again, remember back just minutes ago, I said all these 4 things aren't a great way to measure quality. They're not, because I look at quality as, is my customer happily using my software? But they are amazingly good tools to help pave processes, testing focus, and things like that. Again, when focused on the value path. And make these things visible to the organization. So one of our core values at Roadmonk is transparency. It's why all of our financials are known by every employee. It's why our roadmaps are known by every employee. And it's why our key metrics are known by every employee. And when you look at this, PayPal's not the best. I don't even know how they measure the share of wallet. But Medium and Airbnb are 2 very good companies. They know what their value path is. Airbnb is, are my customers booking hotels, rooms, whatever else you book on Airbnb? And Medium, are customers actually reading articles? So set these as key metrics, or even part of your mission. Show the trends of these on screens around the office. Talk about them whenever you possibly can, and celebrate the positive changes to these things. You have to show your organization that the value path actually matters, because then they will protect it. So take our software. Like honestly, take it as 14-day free trial.
It's not a sales pitch.
Not a sales pitch. Our software centralizes on a few things, but we really only care about one, and it's the number of alignments. So we allow users to create roadmaps, and those roadmaps are shared with every consumer possible. So on any given day, I can use the exact same roadmap data to have an investor conversation, a conversation with my CEO about more investment, a conversation with my teams on what we're delivering, and a conversation with my customers on what we're sort of delivering. So my value path is actually, how do I get to the shareable point, which we consider the number of alignments. So the number of stakeholders that have viewed or shared a roadmap. That's how we know our customers are hitting their wow moment. And it's the sum of all these things, not overly important. If you used our software, you'd get them a little bit more. I sort of stole this slide from one of our board presentations. So what actually gets us to priority, and what are we focused on automating? What are we focused on living and loving and enabling? The ability to log in, obviously. Can I create a roadmap? Can I modify a roadmap? Can I share a roadmap? Can I export that roadmap? And can I view that export? And if that's all my team focused on, I'd be cool with that. I really would. Because it means my customers are getting to their wow moment. And what takes a back test? What do we just sort of give a quick little smoke test to, or what do we not even test? And yeah, my customers will let me know if it's broken. It's things like our admin pages. It's things like the customer reports. It's things like the sign-up workflows. And it's things that are only done a few times. And again, I can't do everything. I'm trying to capture a market right now. We're very rapidly developing new features. I don't have endless people and endless time. Time is my #1 constraint right now, so I have to make sort of trade-off decisions. but I'm super confident in the quality of my software because we're hyper-focused on that get to wow path. And I'm gonna guess everybody out there who lives and breathes a software product, you're already going, what's my wow path? Think it through. It's usually not that complex, unless of course your software's made it complex. And how's that working for us? So what has it meant? And I've got 4 road monkers up here, and they're probably going, yeah, how has that worked out? I mean, the key is, truthfully, our number of alignments is skyrocketing right now, both in new customers and existing customers. We have revamped our entire testing strategy around this. Our testers now sit at the very head of our testing stream, our development stream, sorry. They define the test strategy for what's about to be executed on, and it's the development teams themselves that implement that. The testers still do exploratory testing and things like that, but they are the voice of testing, and they come at it from the voice of the customer. They understand our customer almost the best in our entire company. That honor goes to our CS team because they deal with the customers the most. Testing is second to them. It has revamped our organizational structure. It is the reason I pulled CX into engineering, so that we have the voice of the customer in everything we do. We know what their wow moments are, and we know when they're not happy about it. It has absolutely focused our automated deployment testing. Again, we can't do everything. No company goes live to market with everything automated, but it's allowed us to prioritize things like health checks to make sure that the publishing is still working after every deployment. Because you won't believe how many times over the last year before we put in that health check, when we deployed software, the very first thing that was broken was publish. That kills the wow value path. And we wouldn't know until the next morning when users would start to log in and go, I can't use your software. So it allowed us to prioritize what our tests were. It has absolutely 100% helped our issue triage and reporting back to the company. You're going to get defects. Anybody who thinks you're going to be perfect, sorry, you're humans. It's software. When we get defects, we can absolutely prioritize very quickly based on where they are in the wow path, and things that aren't in heavily used pieces of our software, and things that don't necessarily get us to good don't get prioritized. It has helped us focus our login and telemetry. And I'd love to say that as a company, everything we have is sort of monitored and tracked, and we have metrics on everything. The truth is we don't. Because again, I've got to get a product out the door, but it's absolutely allowed us to put our metrics around the wow moments so we know, is it growing, is it shrinking, is it changing? It's helped our risk assessments. And so as we've headed down new feature paths, we come back to the fact of, does this break the main value proposition of our software? And what I'm not saying is never break the main value proposition of your software, because honestly, the customers may outgrow your value prop and then you have to break it and come up with a new one. But we want to know what the impact is on that before I even go out to the customer. And it has absolutely helped our investment distribution. And by this I mean I have 32 in my engineering team. Right now we have about 12 different features that we want to work on. We won't. That's kind of stupid to try to do 12 all at the same time with a team of 32. But it has allowed us to pull people off of things that aren't wow moments and put them on things that are. And again, our number of alignments has grown steadily over the last year while we've been focusing on this. So Peter Drucker said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And what I say is, make sure what you're measuring actually matters. Questions? Yep.
Okay, I have two questions sort of related, so I'll lump them together. But how do you deal with it for the value pathing when you have clients that are fairly different, right? So they might have quite different value paths.
Yep.
And then kind of related that to in a bigger company where you might have a number of teams working on different features across different parts of the product. Do you then have
You absolutely can have multiple value paths, and I'll go back to D2L. Some of my former colleagues are sitting right here, and some users of the D2L software sitting right behind them. So don't be saying bad things, Jordan and Jordan. If you think through, D2L delivers LMS, right? So a school-based system for content sharing, grading, communication, things like that. Awesome, perfect. So you know, right? And you actually have multiple personas. You have a student value path, you have an instructor value path, you have an admin value path. Truthfully, we've lucked out. We've actually very intentionally made it so there's only one solution for every customer. We've made it sort of no customizations and things like that. Your organization definitely needs to figure out, to be able to make those priority calls, which of those persona paths and value paths are actually the most important, because there's no way you can solve it all, truthfully. I know how fast D2L is trying to move. I've only been gone 16 months. I know what your roadmap was. You definitely have to prioritize what those different value paths are of where you actually focus your investment. And as much as I'd love to say the admin persona is a very valuable one, I'd rather piss off the admin than 100,000 students. So you have to understand your persona value paths, and you have to prioritize those. Unless you got a team that tripled since I left, and then sure, do it all. Other questions? Yep.
So you're in a position where you have the ability to influence what
Yes. Yep.
values or what your company measures. For those of us who are in places where, say, we have defect counts mandated as part of processes, or managers who love metrics no matter what, how do we shift our alignment without putting ourselves at risk?
Yeah, I'm not normally the best one to ask those questions. And for sort of online purposes, I guess you should probably repeat the question. So I'm in the spot where I can actually define, because I sit sort of at the top. How do you help your company shift focus when you're sort of in the trenches, so to speak? I'm not the best one to answer that one, because I've always been the type that I'll push for something, and if my company doesn't want to, it's probably not a company I want to work for. So the way I won the escape defect count, and some of you will know who I'm talking about, don't spread it. I won that by actually showing how sort of stupid the metric was. And I went to make a bet. So CTO came down with, we're only going to have, I don't even remember what the number was, 180 escape defects this year. I said, shit, I'll bet you $5,000 you're not going to get that to 0. And he's like, he was about to shake my hand. And he wait, what's the catch? And then he realized, oh shit, you just will stop shipping software. Yeah, best $5,000 I've ever made, the easiest $5,000, but the company suffers mightily, right? It's how do you sort of shed the light on this thing? I'm hoping, and I mean, I've got 4 amazing of my testing team here. They all have a voice, and it's sort of putting the values of your company at the forefront, right? Again, I started off this whole speech with managers are idiots. We'll ask for stuff to be measured and not really understand what we're even asking for. And escape defects is a super easy one to ask for. How many defects are reported by the field? Ah, shit, the number's too high. Let's drag it down. Okay, great. How do I bring that down? So yeah, phrase your stuff in the how does it value the customer? And again, RoadMonk, our whole principle is the customer is at the center of every decision we make, because without them, I don't have a product.
You basically just said that what you measure will change, right?
Yep.
Or you could manipulate it. So have you noticed manipulations based on what your metrics are? Have you changed your behavior because you're now doing this value path in a negative way or a way that you didn't expect?
Not so much in a way we didn't expect. There has been changes. It's all been positive, truthfully. The other 4 metrics that I listed, yeah, they're gamified out the wazoo, right? It's, all right, if I got to get down in my defect count, I'll ship less, I'll ship slower, I'll slow play some stuff.
Fix later.
Exactly, yep. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of ways to gamify it. The one aspect that you can never have lie is your usage rates, right? It's the one stat that no matter what you do as an organization, you can't fib, you can't falsify. Your customers are either gonna be happy with you or angry at you. I can't ship code and then go out to all my customers and say, can you please give me a 9 out of 10 in my NPS scores, please? Because I'm really trying to make a point with my management team. So that's why we've centralized around that metric, like how many times are users getting to the wow moment? And again, yes, I benefit because I have a single wow moment right now. That's the only thing I can't sort of falsify.
You think you may have, you think that you could have incorrectly defined your wow?
Absolutely. So for those online, yeah, for those online, could you incorrectly identify your wow moment? You absolutely can. It's happened sort of tons and tons of products, right? How do you know? So, I mean, the wow moment is one thing. We also monitor revenue, user signups and things like that. Like those are other metrics that absolutely play into, did we get the wow moment correct? That NPS score that I didn't totally talk about because it's more of our marketing and sales team that really cares about that. That's another way. Like I could be sure my exports and my viewership is going way up, but if my NPS score is still sitting at 1 or lower, -50, I'm probably going, shit, we really missed the mark here. So you can't just, as a business, I can't run the business just on how many times people are exporting. I have to look at these other metrics. But as a product team, absolutely, when priorities are priorities, I look at the wow moment always, the value path. Yep.
How do you turn the Net Promoter Score into an action item that makes the product better?
How do I turn the Net Promoter Score into an action item? So I hate Net Promoter Score. I'll start with that. Because it's so hard to turn into action items. And most companies will have, would you recommend me to a friend, rank me 1 to 10? I can actually gamify and game NPS. EA does it all the time. If you use mobile video games, 9 times out of 10 you get the, hey, do you want to give me 5 stars right after a major accomplishment in the game? You're on a high, right? They've totally gamed the star system, and stars are essentially NPS for video games. What we do is we actually, anytime we get an NPS score of sort of 5 or less, somebody in our company reaches out to the customer to understand why. We have the ability for our customers to put in, here's the reasons I'm pissed off, but most people just go, frick, I'm angry. And without reaching out, you really don't know, honestly, maybe it's raining where you are and you're just having a bad day. Maybe you just got off a call with my support team and they didn't answer your question, but the software's awesome. So without us reaching out, we don't get the data back that allows us then to do our tagging and our analysis on. So the first way to turn into an actual item is to actually get the breakdown of why you're getting the bad scores. Outside of that, it's almost impossible, truthfully. We have customers, so about 3,000 paying customers, but millions of users. We get somebody off in the corner of a company, a 2,000 person company who's having a bad day. How do I action that unless I actually reach out to them? So the first step is definitely trying to get that feedback. And yeah, I hate NPS for that reason, because it takes me a whole lot of effort to understand then what actions can come from it. Any other questions? Yep.
If you're sort of staying steady, trying to follow this value path and creating features and improvements and enhancements that are suited towards that, and then sort of deprioritizing smaller defects or things that you did having less priority on that, does it get to a point, do you think, where those sort of stay as artifacts throughout the course of your product, and where it gets to a point where those actually become something that negatively impact the wow?
So absolutely, 100%. So, I mean, I phrase this pretty simply as protect your wow moment, but we're also in the growth phase of our company. When you hit that stabilization phase, you have the product that's utilized. I'm not real focused on value add in the wow path. I'm now trying to remove other friction points. But I will always prioritize the friction points in the wow path. Anything that slows your user down from getting to wow, to me, always prioritizes over everything else. My other comment on defects, and it sort of drives me nuts, and some of the people that worked with me at other places will understand exactly. Over the course of 10, 15 years, you end up with defects that you're never going to fix. So why do you keep them open? Why do you talk about them every 3 months? Why do you use them in your statistics? They've just become part of the software. And truthfully, I've, in many different jobs, gone back and fixed a defect that was 5 years old because, wow, we really should fix that. And actually piss off more people than I made happy because they were relying on that defect, right? They've come up with their own workaround, and now it's like, oh, crap. This isn't a secret and is not a crack against any company. D2L had an open API path that a customer had found. And it was a pretty smart way of using it. But over the years, that API path actually became a bit of a security hole. And so we did the right thing. We went, oh shit, security rules now state that we can't actually share information. That we're going to close it down. Great. So we closed it down. We closed it down in record time, actually. It got shipped. The very next day, it was 12 customers phoned up very angry because now their reports weren't working because they had figured out, I'm going to use that API path. So you have to be very careful on sort of your defect management for sure. But yeah, I'm in the growth phase, and I'm going to guess 80% of you are working for companies that are also in that high growth rate of a company. I hope you all are. It'd be a really exciting Kitchener-Waterloo if you're all in that growth phase. We're at time. If you have any questions, my email address is pretty simple, james@roadmuck.com. I don't know what the next James is going to get because I took that one. I thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, just reach out.
Thanks for coming to speak.
Awesome. Thanks, Al.